Hey, I'm Justin from Lit Climbing, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the Lit Hangboard. The Lit Hangboard is packed full of features to make testing, training, and tracking your climbing performance as efficient as possible. Let's start by taking a look at the first thing you see, the holds. During the initial design stages of the Hangboard, our plan was to use off-the-shelf holds. However, we quickly realized that holds that are designed for climbing walls are designed to be held in one way. Take this crimp from Technic, for example. It has this nice edge on the top, but every other side of this hold is basically impossible to use. Quality polyurethane is really expensive, so we wanted to squeeze as much value out of every hold as we could. Now take a look at our crimps. They can be rotated, revealing a second edge, doubling its usefulness. The slopers take advantage of the fact that only the top half is used when gripping it to add a 2-finger pocket on the bottom half. The pinches can be rotated to any degree and have a wide and narrow side to them. Even the jugs can be flipped over to give you a nice sloper. The wrench used by the bolts on the Hangboard magnetically attaches to the side, so you always have it at hand. On the other side of the Hangboard, a brush magnetically attaches so you can always keep the holds nice and clean. Unlike a traditional Hangboard, you can actually take the holds off and lay them out however you want. I often like to have the crimps a little bit further apart, so I switch this one with the sloper. You can even full on replace the holds if you want to. For example, we have crimps from 35mm all the way down to 10. We also have these rad triple pocket holds in 3 different depths, and we even now have vertical pinches if that's something you want to work on. The bolts on the Hangboard are actually the same as that you would find on any rock wall, so you could technically use any holds you want, with the caveat that the app won't know about it. If there's a type of hold you think we need, let us know. Now let's jump into what makes the Lit Hangboard truly special, the electronics. Around each hold, there's a ring of LEDs with some other electronics. The sole purpose of these is so that the Hangboard can light up like a unicorn barfed all over it. Nah, I'm just kidding. That's just a little bonus. The true purpose of the lights is to give you real-time feedback during your exercises. Using force and touch sensors, the Hangboard is able to measure how much force is applied to the board, as well as which holds you are using. This allows it to not only figure out the total amount of force, but the amount of force between your left and right arms. Being able to measure force may not seem like a huge deal at first, but with the right software, it can transform the way you train. This takes us to the Hangboard's first practical use, testing your strength. With the ability to measure force, the most obvious thing to do is to measure how much force you can produce. This can be done using the static force test in the app. This measures the amount of force you produce over 10 seconds on various holds. This allows you to see which grips you're strongest with, as well as which could use some work, as well as the balance between your left and right arms. The critical force test is similar, except it tests for power endurance. In this test, you pull as hard as you can for 7 seconds with a 3-second break afterwards. You repeat this 24 times for a total of 4 minutes. The result from this shows you the rate at which your max force falls off. The contact strength test is only possible because of the force sensor's high refresh rate of 320 times per second. This test measures the first 200 milliseconds that your hand comes in contact with the crimp, and it measures how quickly your muscle is able to contract. This is important for dynamic moves, where the faster you're able to establish on a hold, the more likely you are to stick the move. The last test is something that almost doesn't seem like it should be possible to measure on the Hangboard, but it is. That's the dyno test. By performing a dyno on the Hangboard, you can measure not only the peak amount of power your arms produce, but how much you actually lift your center of mass. These two numbers are related, but they are not the same. The power number takes into account only a single moment during the dyno, while the height takes into account the power produced throughout the dyno. For example, it may be possible for you to dyno higher with not actually getting stronger by improving your range of motion and learning to push once you get past the holds. Being able to objectively measure various aspects of your performance helps highlight areas that you should focus on in your training. To show what it's like to work out with the Lit Hangboard, let's run through building a simple power endurance workout. In the app, you can navigate to the workouts page, and to create a new one, you simply tap the plus in the top right corner. Here you get a pop-up with a bunch of templates that you can use as a starting off point. I'm just going to select blank workout for now. I can change the name to something more informative by tapping on the pencil in the top corner. Here I'm going to name it Power Endurance. Each workout is built up of various exercises. I'm going to start by adding a static exercise, which is by far the most common. To do this, you click the plus in the bottom right and choose static. You can see now that the exercise was added to my workout and is populated with the default parameters. By tapping on it, I can edit it. This first option is the amount of time I want to hang. Right now it's set to 10 seconds, but I can simply change it to 7 by pulling down the second slider. The second section is used to set the amount of force that I want to pull. By default, it's set to 100% of body weight, which is simply hanging from the Hangboard without touching the ground. If this is set to something less than body weight, then you simply use your legs to hold up some of your weight. The Hangboard will change colors, and the app shows a graph guiding you to pull the correct amount. This means that you never need to use a pulley system, and you know exactly how much you're pulling without having to account for the friction of the pulleys. In our testing, we found that pulleys add anywhere between 10 and 100% of additional assistance in friction. Meaning if you have a cheap pulley like this one and you're hanging 20 pounds off it, you can pull up to 40 pounds before it even starts to move, just due to its internal friction. With the Lit Hangboard, you're measuring the force directly at your fingertips, meaning there is no discrepancy. If you want to pull more than your body weight, you can often change your workout from using 2 arms to 1 and then using less than your body weight. However, you actually want to pull more than your body weight, you'll of course need a harness and some weights. The way you set the force targets is one of the Lit Hangboard's most powerful features. There's currently 3 ways to do this. Fixed is the most basic and allows you to set a specific amount of force to pull. So if I change the force target to fixed, now I have it set so that I'm pulling 100 pounds. You can change this to whatever you want and it will always be that set amount. The next, as we've already seen, is body weight. This lets you reference your current body weight to set the force target. You can either do this as a percentage, or you can do it as an offset, doing plus or minus a certain amount of force. To do this, change the percent option to offset. We can then set a certain amount, say minus 20 pounds. This would be equivalent to hanging 20 pounds off a pulley system to reduce my weight by 20 pounds. However, we don't need to account for friction and we don't need any pulleys. The final force target type is 10-second max. This lets you reference your most recent static force test results. For example, let's assume that in my most recent static force test, I was able to pull 130 pounds on my left and 140 on my right. If I set my target to 100%, that means I'll have to pull 260 pounds. That's because the test results always take the lesser of the 2 hands, and if you're using both hands for the hang, it doubles it. So in this case, the lesser of the 2 is 130, and doubling it becomes 260. If I was only hanging with one hand, it would be 130. What makes this so powerful is that in the future when I retest my strength, all of my workouts that are using this are automatically adjusted to match my new level of strength. Also, just like with the body weight force target, you can specify an offset instead of a percentage. For now, I'm gonna set this to be 65% of my max. Now we've made it to the hold choice. This is where we get to select which holds, in what configuration, and where on the hangboard we want them. If the selection doesn't match what is on the hangboard when you start your workout, you'll be prompted to make the necessary changes before starting. If you use multiple incompatible layouts during the same workout, for example, using this crimp in both its 25 and 20 millimeter edges, then during your workout between exercises, during a rest if possible, it'll prompt you to make the change. For my setup, I want the left hand to be a 20 millimeter edge instead of the 25 millimeter edge. To set this, I simply tap on the hold and select set as 20 millimeters. You can see it flipped around and is now set as a 20 millimeter configuration. I would like the right hand to be moved over one so that it matches my current setup. To do this in the app, I tap the open space to the right and choose crimp 2025, then tap it again and select set as 20 millimeter to change the configuration. Finally, we get to grip choice. These options will change depending on the supported grip types for the holds you've chosen. The spinner is currently set to half crimp. However, I can change this to full crimp or open hand if I wanted to. I'll currently leave these at half crimp. Finally, the hands let me select which fingers I'll be using for the hold. By default, it's using all 4 fingers and no thumb. If, for example, I wanted to use a thumb catch on the crimp or do a full crimp at the wrap, I can enable the thumb simply by tapping on it. The same can be said about the fingers. For example, if I wanted to do a 3-finger drag, I can set the hand type to open hand and tap the pinky to deselect it. For now, I'll leave it the default for half crimp. If I tap anywhere else on the card, I get out of edit mode. It now shows us a summary of what we have set. Hang for 7 seconds with 65% of our 10-second crimp max, and it shows that we're using half crimps on the 20 millimeter with all 4 fingers. Hanging just one time for 7 seconds isn't really much of a workout. So if we tap on the plus again, we can now add a rest to give ourselves a little break. Again, we can tap on this card to expand and edit it. Rests only have one parameter, the amount of time to rest. I'm gonna change this down to a measly 3 seconds. We now have the framework for a repeaters workout. We just need to repeat it. To do this, we can add a repeat card. Again, tap on the plus and choose repeat. The repeat card will repeat everything that is inside of it, which is currently nothing. To get it to repeat our hang and rest, we simply long press and drag them into the repeat. This will now repeat our hang and rest 3 times. To change that, we again can tap on the card. Of course, you can set this to any fixed amount you want. However, something interesting with the Lit Hangboard is that it can actually tell when you fail an exercise. For example, our hang is 7 seconds at 65% of our max. However, if we don't hang for the full 7 seconds, or we don't pull 65% of our max, the hangboard knows, and it knows that we didn't perform the exercise successfully. We can take advantage of this by setting the repeat count to until failure. This will repeat the contents of the block until one of the included exercise fails, and then it will jump out of it. We now have the foundations for a good power endurance workout, but let's add a longer rest to the end of this and repeat everything 5 times. To do this, I'm gonna add another rest and set it to 2 minutes. And add a repeat block and drag our rest and our other repeat block into it. And finally, I'll set this from 3 to 5. And bam, we now have a power endurance workout that will automatically scale as we get stronger. This is actually the same power endurance workout that we could have started with if we had chosen the power endurance template at the beginning. A minor but very convenient feature of the app is that any adjacent rests are automatically merged. In our case, we would be skipping the 3-second rest because of the until failure loop, but if that was a fixed number of iterations, we would end up with a 3-second rest followed by a 2-minute rest, and the app will automatically merge those so you have a single 2-minute, 3-second rest. It also removes rest from the end of your workout, allowing you to get on with your life instead of waiting around for 2 minutes just to find out there was nothing more to do. If you've ever done any amount of hangboarding, there's probably been a time where you missed the start of an interval, either forcing that hang to be slightly shorter or throwing off your entire workout. With the Lit Hangboard, that's not a problem because it knows when you're hanging and it won't start the timer until you actually start. It'll also measure exactly how long you hang, if that's a little bit more or a little bit less than intended. Going over every single exercise in this much detail would make this video way too long, so those will be in their own separate videos. But for now, let's just take a quick peek at what they are. The pull-up exercise is, you guessed it, for doing pull-ups. However, in addition to being able to setting the basic rep count, you can also do it based on time or even the amount of total height pulled. You can also set the pull-up type to asymmetric, meaning you're pulling more force with one arm than the other. The hangboard will change color as you're pulling to give you feedback on how much you're cheating. This is excellent training for working up to a one-armer. The circuit exercise is similar to the static hang, except the holds that you're using change over time. In this, you can set both the total time, the time between hold switches, and which holds to use. Finally, the typewriter exercise allows you to perform guided typewriters on the hangboard. This is where you're holding yourself in a partial pulled up position and shifting your weight from one arm to the other. With this exercise, you can set where the endpoints are, how many reps, the time to move between the endpoints, how long to stay at each one, and the total force you want to be pulling. The lights on the hangboard will show you where your center mass should be, where your center mass is, and how much force you're pulling. All right, so now you've tested your performance, identified your weaknesses, and built specific workouts to target them. The next step is to track your progress. After training for some time, you can go back and perform the same tests from earlier. Every test and workout you perform is automatically saved, and these can be accessed under the results page in the app. Let me show you my static force results. Here we're looking at a year's worth of tests. Note that the app didn't have all these tests for a whole year, so my data doesn't go that far back. However, you can see that over the last 6 months of training, my crimp strength has been progressing fairly well. Under the main graph, there's a spider graph, and here you can see that my left arm is slightly weaker than my right, and that slopers are one of my strengths. With self-adjusting workouts and auto-logging results, you can focus on putting effort into your training instead of on how to train. This is just the beginning of the Lit Hangboard and what is available right now. We're going to continue to work on adding innovative features to the app to make training just that much better. Head over to litclimbing.com to get yourself a Lit Hangboard and illuminate your training. If you have any questions or suggestions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at support@litclimbing.com. And as always, thanks for watching.